A very good afternoon to all of you joining us today. We are pleased that everyone's here with us, and I see a great number this afternoon. I'm Anton Thalen, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I will be the voice of the webinar this afternoon. Revive and Grow forms a part of our unique Saturday's Offer Learning with Luminary, of which segments are unfolding right up till August. So gear up and get your learning on. In today's segment of Revive and Grow, we're discussing building a network that will help you grow. A conversational exchange of experiences for you to grasp best practices, alter perceptions, and make notes to implement. Building a network on which to leverage is just good business sense, after all. And facilitating the conversation this afternoon for us is Safra Anver, a trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. Joining us today as our subject matter experts, it is my pleasure to welcome Tamryn Batcheller, a sense maker, a psychologist, and an independent consultant, all the way from South Africa. Good afternoon, Tamryn.
Good afternoon, Anton.
Suren Chandrasena, Managing Director, Sirocco Group of Companies, Sri Lanka. Hi, Suren.
Hi, Anton.
And we have all the way from Canada, at the wee hours of this morning, the CEO of wefares.com, Muhammad Younas. Good afternoon, or good morning to you, Younas.
Hello, Anton. Hello, everyone.
And over to Safra now to take us through this riveting conversation. Safra?
Thank you, Anton, for such a riveting explanation of all our guests today. So networking is obviously very important. So let's dive right into it. So I would really like to ask the panel today, who do you think benefits from this networking? So if all of you could, maybe we could start with Tamryn, and then just tell us a little bit about how you think networking actually benefits.
Sure, Safra. I think networking benefits both people. I think good networking benefits both people. The one key aspect about networking that you need to remember if you're wanting to be really good at it is think about how to make it a mutual exchange where people feel like they're not just giving to you, but they're getting something from you as well. A mutual relationship is probably the best way to go with networking.
Suren, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as Tamryn said, it is a two-way street. At the same time, when it comes to networking, I believe that it's better or it's good if you can give first. It's if you are basically giving some input or giving some ideas or giving some leads so that the other person on the other side will feel that there is value that you can get from the individual or from you.
Younas, you come from a virtual environment. What do you feel networking is in that context, and how does it benefit?
Yeah, I think pretty much similar to some what Tamryn mentioned and Suren mentioned. I think the goal here is just to be selfless in any relationship, specifically with networking. So when you are networking with anyone, see how you can help them. I think purely from your perspective, always think long term. Don't think that in that conversation you want to get the benefit back also from that conversation. Be selfless, be out there to help the other person, and you will see eventually, whatever you do good in your life eventually comes back. And sooner or later you will see that how that person, how that relationship would eventually help you in the long run.
Nice. So obviously with networking, you first have to pitch yourself. What do you think the people should keep in mind when they want to build a strong elevator pitch for themselves?
Yeah, I think just be the true version of yourself. I think in your life, what you need to do is you need to build on your strengths. Everyone will have some strength, right? So don't come as someone who's trying to impress someone else just because they have to. The reality is that everyone has something to offer to a lot of people out there in life. So as and when you are coming with your elevator pitch, just see who you are, what your strengths are, and then just share that with the other person that I'm here and this is what I do and this is how I can help and this is what I want help in. So be also Be brave to ask for help. Be brave to ask for introduction. Be brave to ask for what you need, and at the same time be open what you have to offer to the other persons on the table.
Nice. Tamryn, Suren, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, when it comes to an elevator pitch, it will be as we all know. If we can touch on the emotional side and also the statistical side of stuff, then whatever that it's been communicated about you will stick in the other person's mind, because you're basically going into both sides of the brain, the left side and the right side. So that's what I feel about that.
Tamryn?
Yeah, I think I want to touch on 2 points, one from Younas and one from Suren. And from Younas, I really agree with you. I think that you need to know yourself, and that speaks to a level of emotional intelligence, knowing your own personality, knowing how you communicate, what are areas that maybe you should work on ahead of a networking event so that you're communicating as most effectively as possible. And I think the other element that I want to touch on is just around knowing your audience, what Suren has highlighted. So how do you make sure that you've done a bit of a kind of audience profile? What are they going to want to hear from you? How do you nuance what you want to say so that it lands the best with them? Even if that might not be the most comfortable way of presenting it from you, you want to think about, what do my audience know? What do they still need to know? And how do I make this message as clear and effective to them as possible?
Yeah, that actually comes into a very interesting question that I have, because you've done a lot on psychology and looking at people. So a few of us, or a lot of us, are very introverted. We really like to stay in our little bubble. We don't really want to move out of it. What type of tips do you have to navigate such a situation? Because obviously navigating is speaking out, going outside the box. So how do you feel people like that should network?
I think that's such a great question, because often when we think of networking, we think of very extroverted people who are able to walk into a room and naturally pull attention towards them. But I think networking skills are a little bit like exercise. It takes hard work, it takes consistency, it puts a lot of effort in, and it takes practice. And I think it's a skill that can be developed over time. So when it comes to introverts and networking, I think one of the most important things is knowing who you are. And then, like Yusuf spoke about earlier, don't try and be someone that you're not. Try and be authentic and sincere, but know that this is a communication skill that can be developed. It takes time and it takes practice. And sometimes, like exercise, it takes a little while to see the benefits kick in. So if you are an introverted person and you're not quite sure how to make that first move or how to engage with people, it might be very well worth getting a coach to just talk you through some of the basic skills around kind of personal relationships and connection, and also helping you to develop your own communication skills so that they can be mastered in this type of environment.
If you were to give them one exercise to try out, maybe even today, what would you say?
I would say that you need to pay attention to your body. Very often introverts focus so much on what they're going to communicate verbally, but they don't necessarily understand that your body is communicating a huge amount. So Safra, if I'm trying to talk to you and I'm speaking, but my whole body is kind of closed up and I'm pulling away from you as much as possible, I'm sending you an unconscious message that I'm not really engaged in this conversation and I don't really want it to continue. So I think that if you're an introvert or an extrovert, think very carefully about what your body is communicating. How do you almost learn to open yourself up so that even if it's hard to use your words, your body is saying, I'm open to a conversation. And sometimes the simplest thing is to smile and relax your posture as much as you can.
All of us have to smile now. For sure. Suren, how do you think that, obviously you've had a conversation with someone, you've done, hi, how are you, how's your day going, but how do you take that conversation from just small talk to something which is a little bit more meaningful?
Well, what I would want to do first is try to understand, see, if I want to take it to the next level, I should not first focus on myself. I should be focusing on the other person that I'm talking to. What's it that I can give that person, or what value can I add to that person? So by doing that, from a small talk, I can take it up to something that is valuable, because as as long as the other person gets value, then the whole thing can be escalated to the next level, not just keeping it to yourself, because that's when I feel most of the time the small talk gets stuck, so to speak. So it is to understand, because listening is also a big part of the whole conversation. And if you get into a networking session and you're talking about only yourself and not paying attention to what the other person is would like to hear or like to know, and so on and so forth, then you're getting stuck somewhere down the line, and you will not be able to move it or escalate it. So that's what I feel about it.
Younas, what do you think, like, considering you come from a recruitment background as well as a virtual environment, how do you take conversations in that context beyond just the usual basics?
Sure. And I think, I think I would agree pretty much what Suren has mentioned. I think you have to be genuinely interested about the other person. Only then you would come across as someone who's just not out there trying to, share who you are and what you're interested in. You have to see what the other person interested is in, and I think from there build a very meaningful conversation. I would always in a networking event see how I can be out there helping out anyone else who's there. And while you do that, as you do that, people will also show your interest in who you are and what you have done, and that's how you build on those meetings and on those relationships.
Another question that I had was that, so you've met so many people, you've gone past small talk, you've had a meaningful conversation, but obviously contexts come in varying levels. So how do you prioritize these contexts, and how do you approach them once you've done that?
So I think with anything in life, follow up is important. The reality is that we all, specifically in a networking event or just in general life, we have so many things that can always make us busy that we would forget to follow up. And we also have to realize that the people that we are meeting with all of their well wishes for you, and they might want to even help you, they might just forget about it. So I think the way one should go about any of these networking events or any of these relationships is that always follow up with everyone that you have connect with. It can be a small talk, it can be just seeing how they are doing, just asking if there's anything that you can assist with. But the more you can keep in someone else's mind, the more you can follow up with them. You will see that eventually people are out there to help. The nature of the human is that they love to help anyone who they can. But more often than not, it's just that one needs to follow up, whether it is with someone that you need help from, whether it is someone that you want to help to, right? So follow up is, I think, is one of the main things that people usually tend to ignore.
True. So apart from following up, Suren, do you have any other advice?
Apart from following up, what is also important is, I feel, that to know exactly what is it that will add value to you. Who are the people that you will really want to have a conversation with, or keep in your contact list? Because sometimes in networking events, what happens is we go there, we meet a bunch of people, we get a bunch of visiting cards or contacts, and as Anna said, no, we don't keep in touch. But at the same time, if we do not categorize as to who we should be keeping in touch with and who we should be taking the whole conversation or the contact to the next level, it will be a waste. So to know exactly whom you're going to continue to deal with is important.
True. Tammy, do you think that, so obviously you'll be meeting CEOs, directors, they're all the higher tier level of staff, but how do you identify potential in someone? So for example, you met this interesting person, how do you know that that's someone that you should probably down the line keep in contact with because they might be up to something big?
I think that's a great question. I think part of it goes into exactly what Suren was just saying, which is that you need to be strategic about how you go about networking. You don't just want to go to an event and collect as many cards as possible. That almost feels like going to a blind dating event and just kind of gathering as many numbers as you can. That's not really the intention of it. Think carefully about who you want to meet with, why you want to meet with them, and why you think that relationship is going to be important, and then strategically approach them. Like we've spoken about earlier, think around what they could benefit from you, and then engage with them in conversation that is authentic and sincere, and learn something about them. So learn a few personal facts or pieces of information, find out if they're married, have they got kids, so that when you follow up with them, which I think Younas has highlighted is so important, it's not just a random email that's saying, hi, I hope your week has been good. It's saying, hi, Safra, I hope your daughter had a wonderful birthday today. It was wonderful to meet you. So you just touch your emails with something a little bit more personal and relatable, and then boom, that's the relationship that's formed. And that carries you long into the future if you do it strategically.
I think Suren, she's mentioning your daughter. So happy birthday to your daughter as well. So I hope like people from this call might start wishing her now for you. So obviously all of this takes a lot of time because you have to manage work, you have to manage your career, you're managing your life. But obviously when networking, you have to attend events, you have to keep conversations running. How do you actually manage time in to go through this whole hurdle of networking? What do you think, Younas?
Yeah, I think like anything with like anything in life, for anything that you believe is important, you have to just set a kind of a set time aside. So pretty much like how initially Tamryn kind of linked networking with exercise, right? So I would say that okay, just allocate some time on a particular day in a particular week. That I'm going to spend these 15 to 20 minutes once a week, just trying to follow up some of those meaningful conversations that I started. But I just want to make sure that I grow from there. So again, I think these things require time and patience, like exercise, and it also requires a bit of discipline. So what I would suggest is allocate some time on a particular day or in a particular week that, these 10, 15, 20 minutes, I'm just going to go and see how I can just build on some of the relationships that I initially started.
Tammy, what would you say is, so obviously there's so many different types of networking opportunities that are out there. How do you identify what works for you? What are the different types that you think are available virtually, offline? And how do people get access to this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, again, see, you want to see that, okay, where else would you find people like yourself that you want to connect with, right? So let's say if you are someone who's interested in technology, you have to see, okay, what are those LinkedIn groups? What are those other, kind of online conferences or post-COVID, whenever these physical events open, where would you go and attend to learn something that's interested, right? So you want to hang out at the same places the people that you want to connect with, right? So I think in those cases, just try to see where your strengths are, and then just kind of try to be in those some of those places out there.
Yeah. Suren, what about in the Sri Lankan context? Because obviously you would know what are the places that may find interesting, or where you've built your own networks. Where do you think people should start?
Basically, when it comes to networking, you can make it a day in, day out exercise. Whether you're at the gym or whether you are going to a shopping mall or wherever else, what you can do is, maybe talk to somebody or smile, be open a little bit, say hi, hello, and so on and so forth. That also, there is a certain amount of network that is there. Of course, as said earlier, you have the professional network that's there. So you can go into those networks. Say if I'm in engineering, then engineering and business, then I would want to get into networks where there are people related to my industry. So, and keep on building a network from there and see who you want to be in touch with and so on and so forth. But I really feel that networking is something that it's a daily routine. I have met certain people in different parts of the world who has turned out to be absolutely good friends. You know, people at hotels and so on at the reception, or maybe we shared a taxi together or something like that to the airport. And a couple of years down the line, I have got to know them very well. I've got a bunch of business from them, and through them, I have got into very strong and influential networks, and so on and so forth. So it's an open mind that you need to keep. And as much as the professional networks or professional groups are important, the other day-to-day thing is as important. You know, just yesterday I was at the hotel and there was this foreigner who walked in, and he was friendly enough. I invited him for a drink, and I got to know that there's a lot of things that we share, which is in common, and also business opportunities that I can explore with the person. So it's a day in, day out thing, I feel.
Tammy, how do you think someone who's walking into one of these opportunities, what are the 3 things that you think they should do before they actually walk into a meeting or an event, or maybe even an online webinar like this one? How do you think they should go about it?
Sure, 3 things. Let me give that some thought, Safra.
Sure.
I think to put it into a nutshell, it probably encapsulates what has been highlighted already. The first one is to plan around who you think you might meet and who you would like to meet. The second I would suggest is practice in terms of your own kind of interpersonal spaces. So ask people for feedback. Ask your family members or your current colleagues for feedback in how you come across. Do you hug the conversation? Do you ask enough questions? Get people that you feel you trust their feedback around you and ask them for maybe 1 or 2 things that they think that you could do differently. And then third, I think have a conversation starter up your sleeve. And that might mean that you've just got kind of 1 or 2 topics that you know you can talk about easily, that are open conversations, maybe around politics or COVID at the moment is a very easy one to open up a conversation around. And just know that if I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm feeling a little bit awkward and a little bit stuck, which a lot of people do feel in networking spaces, I'm going to kind of pull this conversation and I know that it can get me started. And then trust yourself that this is a learning experience. Even if it goes horribly, that's okay. You learn something from it.
Suren and Younas, do you have anything to add to that?
I think yeah, she
Go ahead.
pretty much summarized it really well. You know, I think yeah, on that perspective, yeah, I think just you know, as far as you're out there being a good listener, and then you have something to contribute, and again, you have just, I think, picking a topic where again you want to build. You want to build any of those things, you know, based on your strengths, right? So if you know something, you can always, and again, you know, as far as it's open-ended, something that other people might have interest in, you know, as she mentioned, whether it's politics, whether it's a certain movie or a certain season that you're watching on Netflix and so forth, right? I think that can just break the ice, and you know, you might get that confidence to keep the conversation going.
Suren, anything else?
I think that pretty much covers the whole thing, isn't it?
So the other aspect obviously is definitely social media. We have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is a huge drama altogether. How do you think that people should stay relevant in a time where on social media everyone's watching you, everyone's looking at you? How do you think you should use that tool as a benefit to networking? Anyone?
I think it would always depend on where your audience is, right? So let's say, you know, for certain people, yeah, some of these networking sites might make a lot of sense. For some others, it might not, right? So I don't think so that everyone should need a feel that they need to be out there in each and every you know, in each and every social media channel and just be very, very vocal about it. You know, if you are if the line of business that you are in, if you're looking for people, you know, around with a certain mindset, they may not be sometimes in these groups. They might be just, you know, offline, you know, a lot more. or they might be out there. But I think the idea here is to prioritize, see where exactly you want to stand out, and just be focused on that part, as compared to feeling this urge that, by the way, I need to be there in each and everything that's happening out there in the market or out there in social media. So I would always prioritize. I would rather build small networks, but meaningful networks. I might have networking with a few set of individuals, rather than, it's a quality of relationship that matters, not the quantity here. So that's what I would do.
So Tammy, in relation to a previous answer, you said we have a question from the audience where they're asking, isn't it not encouraged to ask personal questions on an official email? What if you're networking? How do you work around that aspect of being personal while keeping it official?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because depending on the context, you do want to be careful about how much of a personal conversation you open up. But I think you can do it in polite and appropriate or boundary types of ways. So perhaps it's not about asking a question, but maybe it's about making a statement. So if we go back to the example of Suren, who's got a daughter with a birthday today, it's not asking a question, it's just saying, I hope she had a wonderful birthday. And all that does is keep the relationship there without necessarily opening something up that might become unboundaried or inappropriate.
Sure. Suren, any advice on that?
Yeah, it's also now it's about, you have already had some kind of a conversation before an email is sent out, and you have built some kind of a rapport with the individual. So it's not as if it's a cold call. You're taking a visiting card and out of the blue sending somebody totally unknown an email. So what Tammy was saying is basically it's a follow-up to a discussion or a meetup that happened the previous day or the previous night or so on and so forth. So it is not exactly trespassing on the personal boundaries of that person. And as she rightly said, a statement is good, and you wouldn't make a statement like, I hope your daughter has a good birthday or something like that if you have not had any communication with the person. That's what I feel.
Also, to our audience, if you have any questions, remember you can put it in the chat box and we will get to you throughout this conversation. So please remember, chat box, any questions, as many as you want, and we will definitely ask them as many as we can. So another aspect of, obviously, with networking is you gain skills that you can actually use with your own personal relationships. So be it get the girl, be it family. Tamryn, how do you think you can use these skills that you learn through this networking in just your day-to-day relationships as well?
I think it's what Suren highlighted earlier, that in some ways it's actually the other way around. It's how do you use your day-to-day skills in furthering your networking? Because these are basic skills in communication, and I think that's the beauty of this. They are not something that you're necessarily going to be born with or born without. They're a skill. It's like exercise. You can be developing it and you can be perfecting it over your lifetime. And I think it starts small in your kind of intimate circle of friends, families, and colleague members, and then it kind of spirals itself out. So my encouragement to the audience is that if they feel like they're lacking in networking skills, how do you think about developing those in your immediate circle? And again, it's through coaching, it's through feedback around how you come across, and then taking it out into your networking environment, maybe rather than the other way around, although I think they're mutually beneficial.
Sure. Suren, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's now, for example, say you go into a networking event, and there are a lot of times when you don't feel like going and talking to some person, out of the blues. Now, in a situation like that, what needs to also happen, I believe, is without trying to take it too serious. It is part and parcel of life. That's there. You just try to have a good time. Have a drink, have a good conversation. Don't take the time of the other person too much. Don't be selfish. where you need to always keep in mind that the other people who are there in a networking event, it has also come to network. Okay, so as a result, you have a conversation, keep it open a little bit, take it to a certain level, tell them, look, you have a good day, you have a good time, let me catch up with you later, and you move on. It's something like that. So it's not, I don't think that in this whole thing there should be any strict rules and regulations as to how exactly we need to do it. You need to basically play it by ear sometimes, to break the ice.
So that actually comes into an interesting part of a question that the audience has given us in relation to the social media aspect of it, where they were wondering, like, obviously when you're networking, there are things that you need to avoid that could be detrimental to your brand and networking itself. So how do you do that in the context of a personal relationship as well as on social media? Younas, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would, like, even in an online world, you wanna just keep it pretty light, right? So again, I think don't overthink anything. I think you should, even the brand should come as something that has some element of of a human person or a personality, right? So whether you're online or offline, just take it light. Be genuinely interested in the audience that's out there, and just be the true version of yourself. If you are that, you will pretty much attract the like-minded people, or the kind of people that you want to network with, or the kind of people that you want to do business with. So I think as far as you kind of put some form of your personality out there, that genuineness, that genuineness also to listen to someone else and be genuinely interested about others, I think it will just come naturally to you eventually, right? So I think I would just keep it over there then.
But how do you make it seem like you're not too pushy? For example, if you're bugging people on LinkedIn, sending them inbox messages and things like that, what is the border between you're trying to just get to know them and just being pushy and annoying?
Yeah, again, I think I would apply the same principles that I would do in general in life, right? So I think it's okay to ask someone else that, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you too much. You can just let me know that, what, if you are busy right now, and should I catch up with you later on? I think just don't always keep on bombarding with what you just purely what you need from them. I think at a certain point it's okay to just ask them politely that, by the way, it might not be the best time for you to help me out with this one, or be reply to this message. Would you like me to follow up with you sometime later, right? And I think just leave it over there. Again, it's important to follow up, but it's also important to follow up with a message that, by the way, it appears that you might be busy right now. Should I catch up with you in a month or 2 months from now? And you will see that it's more often than the last message where you actually have shown a bit of empathy for the other person, that how the other person might actually be busy, might have forgotten even to reply back. I think once you do that, you will see that last message itself sometimes, at least will get you a reply back. It might be that, yes, it's not the best time, or B, sorry, I forgot to get back to you. How about we catch up on this day? But again, just that last polite message with an intent that you will not maybe follow up if they are busy, is something that one should do. Pretty much what we do in normal life, right? Just being courteous to the other person.
Sure. Thank you so much. And we actually have another question that can actually work with all three of you, because all three of you are in different parts of the world. You have different cultures. How do you accommodate for culture in networking and being aware of all of that? Suren, if you can first give us like a local perspective.
Yeah. Now, for example, in Sri Lanka, there are situations where people, when they are talking, they will, after a certain while, they will touch you, they will tap on you, and so on and so forth. That's the local culture that's there. But that might not be the same in other parts of the world. And so you need to understand where exactly, in which parts of the world when you are there, to know exactly what the culture is. Now in Sri Lanka, because people touch the other person a lot, they get into their personal space a lot and so on and so forth. But in certain countries, that is a taboo. You know, they would want their personal space. No sooner you break that rule, you know, they become very uncomfortable. So that is, then it's not about a networking scenario. It's about how do I get out of the other person's mind is how do I get out of get this guy out of my personal space. And so it's like that. So you need to be aware of where you are and what you do, and to know that certain cultures dictate certain certain comforting factors. So that's what I would think that we need to do when it comes to different cultures.
Tamryn, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think cultural awareness is such an important concept, you know, and I think it goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence. So if we think about it as a stepped approach, you can't just jump to cultural awareness or emotional intelligence. You have to start with self-awareness. Once you've done some work around your own self-awareness, it gives you the skills to recognize, actually, not everybody sees the world and interprets the world the same way as I do. There's this beautiful framework that we all seem to assume, which is, why can't you be normal just like me? And it's the just like me that gets us into trouble with other people, especially if it's perhaps from a different culture. So once you've done some base work around self-awareness, it gives you the tools and skills to recognize that people interpret the world in different ways, which allows you to have a social awareness. Once you've developed a social awareness, it links beautifully into an emotional intelligence and then into a cultural intelligence as well. I agree with what Suren has highlighted. I think, again, if you're going into a place from a different context or a different culture, do some basic research around that. Know how different people greet one another. Is it a handshake? Is it a hug? Is it a bow? There are all different cultural nuances that I think if you're going to be serious about networking, you really want to familiarize yourself with before you're going into that space.
Yeah, and Younas, it's a bit different when it's a virtual platform. For example, if I was on VFairs, I wouldn't be able to see their exact expressions. I wouldn't see if they're annoyed or happy. Like, how do you deal with that sort of an environment?
Yeah, I think I think most of us are now familiar, like, you know, like something like Facebook or LinkedIn has pretty much, you know, kind of shown the basics of how to really have most of those conversations. So whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook or LinkedIn, right? I think in most of these things, just again, being cautious of the other person time and you know, just seeing what's appropriate and how to best ask the questions such that you show genuine interest on the other person. Just because, of course, you cannot see the emotions that's out there. I think, you know, you have to just see, you know, in many of these cases, if getting into getting into a video call is always better than, you know, getting into a text message, right? So, you know, so having that ability to see someone else's expression is always going to be helpful. So I think just depending on the nature of the conversation that you're having, you know, if you can meet someone, that's great. If not, if you can have an audio video call, that's always better. Otherwise, when it comes to purely text-based conversation, I think just you know, follow the basics, follow the rules, just ask the questions and, you know, see what the other person is saying. You just have to be conscious about you know, the wording that's out there itself. You know, again, as far as you have done a bit of research about, you know, how to best communicate with the other person, you will eventually pick up on these things. You know, you learn from your mistakes, and it's always okay to ask someone else that, you know, is this something that's okay with you, etc. And as far as you have those small touch points of confirmations with the other person, it should be totally fine. You will eventually see that what they are comfortable with, what they are not, and then you can build the conversation from there.
So another question that came up actually was that, okay, you've decided your networking opportunities, you've gone into these conversations, you move from small talk to big talk, and you've started to build your context. But how do you like evaluate yourself to understand if you're actually doing it well? Are you making the right conversations? How do you self-evaluate in such a way that you progress over the period of time? Suren, any thoughts?
See, first and foremost, when you're going into a networking event, you need to have certain goals set for yourself. If I, for example, if I'm going to a management networking event, I would want, in my mind, I will know, okay, do I need, who am I going to meet? Number one, how many people am I going to meet? How many contacts will I be making? What kind of time will I be spending there? Before I go, I will also do a little bit of research to know exactly who's there and who are the people that I should be networking with. So if you have done your homework, when you go in there, it's basically ticking your list in your mind. You know whether you will know whether I have met the people that I want to. You will know whether I have been able to give a positive impact to or impression of of me to that person. I will know whether I can continue to have a relationship with those people, and so on. So in my view, I feel that the only way that you will be able to self-evaluate is if you know exactly what you want in the first place, what your whole idea behind that networking session is. So that's what I feel about that.
So basically identify the goal of what you're doing and then see if you've met your goals as a review for yourself.
Yes, because if say sometimes it might be a forum where you have 50 people or 100 people. It doesn't mean that you're going to go meet the entire 50 or 100 people. You know, you're not going to be talking to each and every person, but you will know exactly who you want to meet. You should know what is the outcome of the whole thing. If it's a business, if it's a business, say a project that somebody is working on, or a consultant that you want to make some connections with, and so on and so forth. And by doing that, you will always, going back to the original thing, you'll also know what to give. For example, if you're meeting a particular person, and you know that this person is there, it will be always good to see what kind of input that you can give them. Maybe a different line of business or a new project or something like that, where you might have certain information that you can give the other person. So depending on how the whole thing goes, it will be an easier thing for you to evaluate as to what is the outcome of the whole conversation. I have had scenarios where I have gone into places and made certain communications with certain unknown people, and the fact that I had given something first, something that is of value to them, has just opened a lot of opportunity. And sometimes it goes so well that those people itself will go and introduce you or me to the other people that are there, who might be in their circle, that will be of help for me. So that's what I feel there.
Also, so obviously when you've built these skills, you don't really need to only always use it for people outside your current networks. You might actually have to do networking within your own teams, in your own offices, and you need to be able to communicate with them in such a way that you build camaraderie and then therefore create a very efficient team. Tamryn, do you have any advice on how you use these skills to actually build that internal network within workplaces and homes?
I think this touches back on what Younas has been saying throughout this webinar, which I 100% agree with, which is that you have to be authentic and sincere. And there's a beautiful framework written up by, I think her name is Francesca Gino, who writes about intellectual humility. And I think if you are in a team or even the leader of an organization, intellectual humility is how do you ask questions, not just to test the person whether they know the answer, or asking questions because you wanting to kind of force conversation because you actually know the answer. Ask questions because you really want to learn something from that person. See every person as someone who can teach you something, whether you are the leader and they are the newest person in your team, or whether they are your colleagues. And I think that idea of intellectual humility is such an important one, both in networking outside, but probably even more so in networking within your own organization. Because very often we go to networking events thinking I can learn from all of these people, but we forget about that capacity or potential within the people that are in our teams at the moment.
Also, to our audience, please remember that you can ask us questions anytime. Just drop it in the chat box, and so that we can try and address them as much as we can during our short time here today. So remember, chat box, any question, but however ridiculous you think they are, we'll try and answer them. So the other part of what I was thinking was, obviously we've spoken about humility and authenticity and all of that, but obviously there's also the gender conversation. So we when it comes to men networking, it's very easy for them to say, like for example, like Suren said, come, let's go have a drink, have a smoke maybe, have a chat on the side, and then be able to build networks through those. And also there's the boys club, so to say. But how do women actually get into this idea of networking and be able to have the same potential in that sense to create networks of their own? Tamryn, as my comrade on this webinar, what do you think?
Sure, I think that is such an important question. I'm actually really interested to hear what the men say in this as well, because I think that would be really helpful to hear their insights. And I think this again comes back to appropriate boundaries and where those boundaries sit. So I'm going to hold my comments, Safra, and actually ask if some of the men can comment and contribute towards that, if that's okay with you.
Yes, completely fine. Younas?
Yeah, it's a tough one, I have to say. But I think in general, and I think it varies from, of course, whether you're networking with someone outside your relationship or whether it's something within the team. I think within the team themselves should make a conscious effort that anything that you're doing out there to network, to kind of build that kind of a team around it, actually provides an equal opportunity to everyone, regardless of the gender, regardless of the background, regardless of anything else, right? You need to make sure that anything that you do as a leader, anything that you do as a company, anything that you do as management, makes it just equally available for everyone involved in the team. And I think that's I would primarily focus on when it comes to the people that in a networking environment where of course you don't control that all by yourself. Again, you should also make a conscious effort, just being a human, that whatever you are out there, whether you're offering someone a particular advice, whether you're offering someone a particular opportunity, or you're trying to take one, you are just being conscious that how it should be. Just again, care for all people who are out there, or otherwise, in general, one shouldn't be. I think if that's out there, that's perfect. If that's not out there in some cases, I think what you want to do is just build on your strengths. You should realize that, by the way, I will not be able to, I think, make use of each and every opportunity that's out there that might exist for a certain type of people or a certain type of people with a certain background. And that's okay, because eventually you will always have your own strength. Also, you will also have your own areas also. So that's the last part, that you should never demotivate you, because you will see that what, if you will always just be genuine to who you are, you'll eventually find the kind of people who want to build a network around that particular interest area also.
Suren, any thoughts to add to that? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So my thinking on this whole thing is that say if it's a networking event, whether it's a man or a woman, they have come for the same purpose. And in today's context, you have so many professional females who do a lot more work or do a lot better work than the men. So I feel that it is just because it's a female, just because you might not be able to be as free to call the person, let's go have a drink or let's go have a smoke or whatever the context that you was talking about. It doesn't really matter, because we are in a professional environment. We have come together for a professional meeting or a networking session, and that shouldn't have a barrier just because you're a male or a female. it's about carrying on that networking activity given certain boundaries and given certain protocols that you need to follow and continue, because I simply don't feel that it is just because it's a female that you need to be draw a lot of red tape on the whole thing, because most of the events that I go to, there are a lot of females who are there and a lot of professionals who are there, and it's as easy as any other men that you can communicate, and sometimes it's even easier, so I don't really feel that it's a difficult thing there.
Tamryn, any thoughts? Yeah, Suren, you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Tamryn?
Yeah, I think the men in the group have highlighted some really important points, and what Yusuf was speaking about, I think, is really relevant to hold on to, especially in an organization. I've worked in many organizations where the social gatherings, where so much of the kind of informal relationship building happens in contexts that are not gender equal. And I think that, this question opens up a much bigger question in society about systemic issues when it comes to gender and gender roles and gender expectations. So I think we could open an entire different webinar around inclusivity and diversity and how to manage that, and it could get quite intense. But I think these are important questions to consider, and I agree with Suren that you should just be open to considering, is there anything that I could be doing here that might actually make this other person feel uncomfortable because of their gender, because of their ability or disability, because of their background. Language is another one that often can become an inclusion and exclusion factor. And how do I manage that appropriately? Like Yusuf spoke about, we are all people. And so how do you just make sure that you're holding that professional etiquette and remaining very mindful that you might be working with somebody or relating to somebody who might be seeing this from a different perspective? How do I make this as appropriate for them to bring out the best in them, even if that means I have to slightly adjust how I would ordinarily do it?
So considering we're coming to the last bits of this webinar, so I would really like to get one example from each of you of a networking event or maybe a meeting that went really bad or sour, and one that went really well, so that we can compare the two. So if you can start with Younas.
Yeah, I think I would say, like with anything else, a lot of what you do in the beginning, you're just learning out there. And I think as far as you're just vulnerable, it's okay for you to fail. I think that should be okay. And I think as far as you just know that, by the way, it will take a bit of time for you to really have to really have to really kind of get a hang out of it. You will eventually learn. And again, I think back in my university days, you want to go out there, you want to network with the recruiters from Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and you will feel that, okay, you could have done a lot more better job, in that 1 minute, 2 minute elevator pitch. And I think you'd have to realize that, you will not be perfect in every communication that you're doing, and sometimes the small small circle of contacts that you believe that you should build network with, they might be busy, or there might be just too much noise around them, right? So it might be a bit hard for you to stand out, and it's okay. And I think that's where, like with anything else in your life, whether it's building networks with with individuals or trying to reach a certain company, you should realize that the world is pretty huge, and sometimes if you're unable to achieve something, you will see that many other doors will open. So again, I think in my life, you go for the likes of Apple, Microsoft, but then you end up working for a small company, and then eventually what you see is that you build on that relationship. And at a certain point now, a lot of those companies that you wanted to network with, they actually are in touch with you right now. So 12, 13 years back, it was my dream to work for some of those companies, and eventually with those small relationships that you build over the years, now these are the companies who want to do networking with our small company, just because we have a software to offer that they don't have, right? So again, I think just build on your strengths. Each and every relationship matter, no matter how small it is, and you will see that eventually that grows up sometimes to a much different, to much different value, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. Suren, one sour example and one good example. Tamryn, until he connects.
Sure. I think similar to Younas, the beginning example was probably when I was much younger, and I went to an event and I was quite overwhelmed by it. Networking events can be very overwhelming. And so I spent most of the time just in a very, very small comfort zone, you know, holding onto a drink, chatting to someone that I already knew, and just staying within my safe space. And I think over time, as you become more familiar with how these processes happen and what to expect in them, and you build confidence, you are able to then kind of walk into the space and work the space as you want to, in a way that comes across as confident, not as arrogant, and definitely you don't want to become a narcissist, but just being able to develop that personal confidence in those spaces, very similar to what Younas has highlighted.
Sure. I don't see Suren back yet.
Hello.
He's back. Okay. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. I can remember an incident where I went into a networking function where it was a delegations night, and there were I was talking to this gentleman from Russia, and during the conversation I was telling him that we would do a fair bit of work with Ukraine, and I was praising the country and so on and so forth, and you know, the last 4 or 5 visits I have had there, and about the visits I've had and so on. Then he asked me all of a sudden, by the way, have you visited Russia? I said no. Then this guy told me, look, you know, we don't really like the Ukrainian guys, and we really don't like you doing any work with them and not doing any work with us. You know, it kind of, you know, put me totally off balance, and I didn't know exactly what to say at that point of time, because I simply missed the fact that they do have a problem between the two countries. But in my mind, Ukraine and Russia, you know, it's the same country kind of in my mind. So that was a very negative and a bad experience that I've had in a networking event. It was so bad that, you know, it took me a good 10-15 minutes for me to gather myself before I went and met the other person.
And
so
do you have a positive story?
On the positive, of course, there are so many. For example, as in networking events, I have had situations where I have been communicating with certain people, and there are certain networking events whenever I can take somebody of value, I try and take them, so that when I'm talking to somebody, I can introduce these people, saying this particular person is into this line of work, and as a result, he can you know, give certain amount of business and so on. So by doing things like that, I have gathered a lot more contacts and positive input from the people that I've come in communication with at the event.
Thank you. So obviously from now we've heard 3 amazing perspectives on networking. We've also learned that even they've made a few blunders along the way, but instead of making them the reason to stop networking, they've used it to gain a lot more insight on how to do it better. So I think the best way in is to jump into the well and try it out for yourself. You will mess up a few things, that's completely fine, but you need to get out there and go meet people, have conversations, and find out what is your own unique way of doing it. So I'd like to thank our 3 panelists today, Younas, Suren, and Tamryn, for being here at different hours of their day, from 3 a.m. and so on. So this brings us to the end of our webinar for today, and I would like to now hand over to our Chief Evangelist, Anton, to take over the proceedings.
Thank you once more for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Tamryn, Suren, and Younas for joining us and for that wonderful knowledge share. Certainly an afternoon well spent. Thank you, Safra, for steering the conversation this afternoon. Perhaps one of the most essential skills today in today's corporate jungle. As the saying goes, networking is not collecting cards or contacts. Networking is about planting relations. And that's exactly what we heard today. Your network is your net worth. On that note, a quick thank you to H1 for powering our session this afternoon and for being our technology partners for the series. Next week, join us again for Revive and Grow segment, where we will discuss managing effective meetings. Watch our social media space for more details. Coming up in the next hour is This, That, and the Other, Season 1 with Varun. Click in and stay glued, discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of yet another controversial topic titled Diversity and Equality. Are we there yet? Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive.